China's quiet stance on Ukraine and pressure on Taiwan pose a serious security threat, according to Japan. Officials say the Japanese are undertaking their biggest arms build-up since the Second World War to deter Beijing. There are also reports out today that the United States is considering producing weapons with Taiwan, either providing the tech for production in Taiwan or using Taiwanese parts to make the weapons in the US. The Taiwanese need help. Analysts question their firepower and say their 4 months of mandatory military service is poor, which is why grassroots training groups are springing up.
Xie Xiongyan and An She are both students of Kuma Academy, a private organization founded in 2021 and recently given a donation of some 19 million euros by Taiwanese tycoon Robert Cao. The organization aims to give civil defense training to some 3 million people over the next 3 years. Today, under the watchful eye of his instructor, Xie Xiongyan carefully raises and moves fellow students posing as wounded. As China ramps up its rhetoric towards the Taiwanese people, their unease about the island's future has been growing. Xie is among them.
We've been living on this island for a long time. We have our own systems and our own lifestyles. Most of us are reluctant to see that change.
But the training here is not just about moving the wounded on a battlefield. After attending one of the day's lectures, Anne is doing some follow-up research on her phone about how to fight disinformation, a common tactic in war.
Information warfare is real, and you can see it everywhere. I've been trying so hard to communicate with elderly people. I tell them not to believe fake news or what's illogical. You'll feel frustrated because you don't have time to teach them how to distinguish the two.
Ho Cheng-hui, one of the co-founders of Kuma Academy, says the classes aim to foster a sense of hope among Taiwanese people and show people how they can play a part in the national defense.
After Xi Jinping took office in 2013, the rising threats posed by China to Taiwan became a reality. And the example of the Ukraine war has shown the Taiwanese people that the risk of war over Taiwan is very possible.
But Xie Xiongyan also knows that any possible aggression from mainland China doesn't necessarily start with a bullet. Another reason why he finds Kuma's training so important.
Many people are unaware that war might begin in different forms, for example, cyber attacks or trade wars. China wants to destroy our will to resist, and they've been doing this for a while.
Civilians, in their own ways, are strengthening civil defense. No one wants a war over Taiwan, but Xie believes in preparing for the worst.
Jeff Kingston is Director of Asian Studies at Temple University, Japan. A grassroots organization giving crash courses to Taiwanese citizens on civil defense. What does that tell you about Taiwan's preparedness?
Well, it tells me that they're learning the lessons of Ukraine and also underscores the huge military gap between China and Taiwan. China has 1 million soldiers, Taiwan has 88,000. So after 2 decades of double-digit increases in military spending on China's side, Taiwan this year has a record increase of 15%. But overall, its defense budget remains around $20 billion, 1/10 of what China's is.
So is the government really doing enough? Because analysts have described mandatory service in Taiwan, which is only a few months, as poor.
And they're right. When they ended conscription in 2018, that was a big turning point. The short training period that people undergo, they don't actually handle weapons. It's more conceptual. So, yes, I agree with those analysts who believe that that is insufficient. And that's why I think the chip tycoon has stepped in and say, look, we need territorial defense. We also need to train snipers. All this in service of the Porcupine National Defense Strategy, which is to make it too costly for China to invade.
But as far as conventional warfare practices go, where does Taiwan stand? Do you think Taiwan does stand a chance against a giant like China?
Well, that's why I think that it behooves them to adopt asymmetrical systems like Stinger missiles and mobile artillery, type of weapon systems that are hard to target and hard to counter. And the United States has been making these available. And in the new U.S. defense budget, they've earmarked a little over $8 billion of grants and loans to make this possible. It also seems the United States is going to engage in joint military training. So I think everybody recognizes a lot more needs to be done. But I think that the Ukraine has underscored the value of asymmetrical defense. And I think that Taiwan will be pouring more of its efforts in that direction.
And we're all very aware of Russia's intentions as far as Ukraine goes and the region. But what about China's intentions? China is, of course, holding its Communist Party Congress this week. What has leader Xi Jinping's speech told us?
No surprises. I mean, he reiterated what was declared in the August white paper on Taiwan, that China will not renounce the use of force and they will take all means necessary to deal with what they refer to as the Taiwan problem. But I think that Xi has seen what can go wrong with Putin's invasion of the Ukraine. So I think it probably makes it less likely that he will invade.
And any concerns from where you are, Japan being the second biggest economy in Asia and important in stability for the region?
Well, clearly, Japan sees a threat to Taiwan as a threat to Japan. Last year, Shinzo Abe basically sent a very clear warning to China that a military attack on Taiwan would lead to a Japanese military response. And that's the first time in the post-war period that Japan has ever made such a threat. The current Kishida government has sort of tried to backpedal away from that. I think that they want to emphasize more on diplomacy, but clearly they have a lot at stake and they are committed to the defense of Taiwan. But, you know, as your report indicates, Taiwan is very vulnerable to cyber attacks and also trade embargoes. And so these are vulnerabilities that China may exploit short of an invasion.
Jeff Kingston, Director of Asian Studies at Temple University, Japan, thank you very much for your analysis.